Hey, such people are back in the office today again, and we're going to be talking about the four horsemen. What are the four horsemen? Why do we care about the four horsemen? What do the four horsemen do to us? So, four horsemen is a reference to the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and so what this is basically an analogy that these are the things that are going to be really damaging your body. Now, these four horsemen are not necessarily the root causes, they're kind of the next level behind the root cause. But a lot of times the root causes are causing these things to happen, and this is a lot of the ways we can tell how much damage is being done in someone's body, right? So the four horsemen are as follows. Number one, chronic, low-level, unneeded inflammation. So inflammation, okay? So inflammation is, how do I put this, is how your body heals, okay? If you break a bone, you're gonna have inflammation. If you have an illness, you're gonna have inflammation. That's the way it's supposed to be. If you didn't have inflammation, you'd be dead. But when you have inflammation that is being set off when there's no invader, or when there's no broken bone, and there's no trauma, there's no injury, that's when it can cause damage, because unfortunately inflammation, although it is, it's great, there's some kind of like a shotgun approach to it, and it can cause kind of collateral damage. And that collateral damage, especially when there's no need for there to be damage at all, because there's no stimulus for it to be beneficial for you, that can cause damage to your other tissues and then lead to other problems. So chronic low-level inflammation that is unnecessary is one of our four horsemen, and we're going to talk about it at length in a future video. It's going to get its own video, and we're going to talk about specifically what can cause inflammation, what it is, and then how to mitigate that. And that'll be for all the four horsemen too. The next horseman, is going to be oxidative stress. And the way that I always think about oxidative stress is that people can relate to is that if you open up an apple, cut it in half, and you set it out, it's going to turn brown. That's oxidation. That process happens in our body as well, and our body has systems to protect against that. So, one of the reasons why people, most people know about antioxidants. The reason why we have antioxidants, or we make our own internal antioxidants, which are much more powerful, is to protect against oxidative stress. And oxidative stress can cause damage to the body, and we'll explain that, and again in a further video in more detail, grueling detail if that's what you guys want. And then where does it come from, how to mitigate it, and so on and so forth. The third horseman is a little bit more of a technical term also. It's called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is, if anybody's diabetic or pre-diabetic, those people have insulin resistance. And what does it basically mean? It basically means that your body is not able to handle sugar that you take in from the environment and get it to where it needs to go. And where it needs to go is inside of all of our cells. It uses energy. And when it doesn't do that, when it builds up in the bloodstream, it causes damage, and we call that process glycation. We're going to talk about this in detail, how you develop insulin resistance, what insulin resistance is, what the definitions of it is, in terms of like how we diagnostically look for it, whether it be A1C, whether it be fasting glucose, whether it be glucose tolerance tests, etc., how we diagnose insulin resistance, and then why do we care? How does it cause damage? And we can go in at length of that, and then of course, how to mitigate that. The last one is called, that my mentor coined, was called Catabolic Physiology. And what Catabolic Physiology is another name for is this excess productions of cortisol. And if anybody has ever heard of cortisol, they usually think about it in terms of being bad. Cortisol actually is necessary for life, and you would be dead if you didn't have it. There's conditions called like Addison's disease, where it's an autoimmune attack on the adrenal glands that make cortisol, and if you don't have cortisol, you can actually have adrenal crises and you can die, and I've seen that, and you don't want to have any part of that. But when you have, it's kind of like inflammation, it's necessary when you need it, and it's necessary in different quantities at different times, and it's supposed to be dynamic, and you're supposed to be able to change that. But there is a general pattern, and we'll talk about that, of how it's supposed to be released in the body, what it does, and what happens when you have excesses of that, and how that causes damage and leads to other horsemen to be detected and or caused. So unfortunately, in medicine, there's no black and white. There's shades of gray, and as people have talked about in functional medicine, everything causes everything, unfortunately. But what we're going to try to do during these video series is try to break it down and to an understanding that we can all kind of follow and be organized about how things happen. during one of the videos that I made early on, and this is what is functional medicine. And during that video, I did reference a table, and the table is, if you can imagine, it goes as follows. There's symptoms people come in with, I'm overweight, I have anxiety, I don't know, whatever that symptom is, I have pain, etc. There's that column, and that's what people come into the doctor for, symptoms, right? But then, if you can imagine, the next column of the table would be something like what part of the system, obviously if you have a symptom, something is broken in your body, it's not normal to have symptoms, so some kind of system in your body is broken down. And then the next level is the 4 horsemen of what causes that damage, right? And then there's, well, yes, we know that your A1C is 9%, aka your blood sugar is not doing so well, and we know your inflammation levels are high, and we know you're in catabolic physiology, and we know that you have this, and this, but that still doesn't answer the question why that happens. So we always want to go back to the root cause. But anyway, I hope this kind of helps give us a direction of, number one, what are the 4 horsemen? Why do we care to some degree what they are, like a very short explanation of those, and then hopefully get you excited about learning about this in greater detail, so you can understand, number one, do I have this? How do I tell my doctor about how to look for it? And then how do I ultimately get that to go away, so you can be at the best health you can be at, and God forbid, not suffering, unnecessarily. So just stay tuned. We're going to be talking more in depth about each of these 4 horsemen and what to do about it. So I hope you have a good afternoon. Take care.